minutes after 11 o'clock. This is our last interview of the week, isn't it, Robin?
Yes, it is.
This is a good one. This is a good one. Dr. Mark D. Bruce has a story to tell you. I think we have something in common. I love dogs.
Yeah.
His book is called Jackie, a Boy, and a Dog, a warm Cold War story. Dr. Bruce, did he say he's in Wisconsin?
Yes, he did.
Did you tell him that's where you're from?
No, I was focused on him. Go Packers.
He travels with the International Medical Ministry. He's a pen pal of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. Or was. She passed away,
Yeah.
right? He's the president. And the president and Mrs. Kennedy gave Dr. Bruce a pup nick.
A pupnik.
Named Streaker. Oh, was this the one he killed?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry. I'll get that in a second.
The grandpup of Strelka.
The grandpup. Okay, you know all this stuff. Dr. Bruce, I'm so looking forward to hearing your story. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Larry. I'm really good. Thank you.
Robin said you're in Wisconsin in the cold tundra.
So, Robin, that's why we live here, you know?
That's right.
What part of Wisconsin are you in?
This is southeastern Wisconsin, kind of a suburban Milwaukee area.
Okay.
Nice.
Tell them where you're from.
Cudahy.
All right, yeah.
There you go.
Right on the lake. Right on the lake.
Yeah, exactly. Right there.
All right, so the sad part of this story is over with in the very, very beginning, right? Well, tell us that story.
Well, I grew up with two loves. Number one was baseball. I loved baseball. This is kind of in the Stan Musial area, the St. Louis Cardinals, because we lived in central Missouri at the time. And the other great love I had was for dogs. And I had this little dog called Midget, and she was my best pal. I was involved with a 4-H dog care project so that we learned to groom the dogs and learned to obedience train the dogs. And she was my, like I said, best pal. We would play catch together. She loved to catch them all. And so in the early summer of 1963, June, kind of one of those warm mid-central Missouri days, we had a big backyard. All the kids would come over and play baseball. And I didn't know Midget was outside. And so I was at bat, and I was kind of practicing my Stan Musial cut, and I was ready for the pitch, and one of my brothers threw me the ball. Unbeknownst to me, Midget was behind me. She thought the ball was coming for her. She jumped up to catch the ball right as I was hitting the ball, and I hit her in the head and killed her.
Oh, my gosh. How old were you?
I was 10.
Oh, my gosh.
You know, if that had happened today, I'd probably be in therapy. But we didn't have those kind of resources back then.
No,
and, you know, my family was from very modest means, and I just stood and cried and continued to cry for the next week.
I bet. Oh, my gosh. And the guilt you must have felt, too, right?
Oh, it was horrible. I mean, I can still see it even now.
Oh,
it was an incredible, probably the saddest week of my life.
Wow.
Gosh.
Wow.
That is so...
So, okay, so we go from there to suddenly having a friendship with John F. Kennedy. How did that happen?
Yeah, that's kind of, this is a story of divine intervention, and I don't mean that very flippantly. I really mean that, because I sat down. We would always listen to Paul Harvey, news and commentary at noontime.
Right.
And a week later, we're listening at noontime. I'm kind of taking a break from my weeping to listen to Paul Harvey at lunch, and he announces, well, they just had a litter of pups at the White House. What are they going to do with all those dogs? And I'm thinking, hey, I need a dog. I'll write the Kennedys, and I'll tell them what happened, and I'll tell them I need a dog. So I did, and my brothers, I'm the youngest of three boys, my two older brothers, just they had a field day with that idea.
Oh, gosh.
And so they thought I was just really stupid. And my mom said, look, ignore your brothers. You go ahead and you write that letter. And so I did. And I sat down and I wrote this letter to the Kennedys, and I said, I killed my dog. Can I have one of yours?
Oh, gee.
But were you wordier than that?
I was.
Okay.
A little bit more to that, but that was kind of the gist of what I said.
Oh, my gosh.
And I got a reply back, very, very polite reply back from Nancy Tuckerman, who was one of Jackie's secretaries. And she says, thank you, we're so sorry for your story, but we're not going to give any of the dogs away. And I forgot about it.
Oh.
That was in June. And I went to immediately plan B. And my plan B was, I need a dog. And every day I would talk to my mom. I said, Mom, let's go to the dog pound. We didn't call it the Humane Society back then. It was the dog pound.
Right.
Let's get a dog. Let's go today. And I was like, no, let's wait till we get back from this trip, or wait till your father gets back from this next trip, and let's wait till we get the fence in the backyard put up. And there was always some excuse of the day. But I didn't let go of it until August. My father was a minister, and he would preach a couple of sermons, a couple of services each Sunday. My oldest brother had gone to church with him for the first service, and then there was Sunday school in between the two services, so we were still at home, and we would frequently get calls from Sunday school teachers telling us, gee, I can't be there today, the dog's sick, or the cat's sick, or the kids are sick, or we're going out of town, or whatever. So we would get a lot of calls on Sunday. But this Sunday I was ready, and I was waiting for my next brother and my mom to get ready to go to church. And I was sitting at the kitchen counter reading the Sunday funnies, and the phone rings. And so I pick it up because I was closest to the phone, and it was a strange lady on the phone sounding as obviously a long-distance call. And she says, is Master Bruce there? and I wasn't used to being called Master around the house, and so I thought she meant Mister. And I said, well, he's already gone to church. And I was kind of puzzled because most of the people that called from my father would call him Reverend Bruce. So I said, would you like to speak to my mother? And this polite lady says, oh, yes, that'd be fine. And so I put my mom on the phone, hand the phone over to Mom, and she identifies herself as Evelyn Lincoln, the president's personal secretary.
Oh, my.
And says, the Kennedys have decided to give Mark a dog if you still want one.
Oh, wow.
And so, when the president calls and offers to give you something, you don't say no. And so I kind of am watching my mother, hearing just her side of the conversation. And she seems kind of a lot more animated and happier than she does with most Sunday morning phone calls. And she hangs the phone up and she says, Mark, that was the White House, and they're going to give you a dog.
Oh, man. That's so cool.
So
wow.
I heard the part about I'm getting a dog. The part about the White House was pretty much lost on me, and I'm only 10 years old. And so I go to church, and I tell my dad I'm waiting in his office after he gets out of service, which is kind of unusual because I'm usually in my Sunday school class. And I said, Dad's kind of surprised to see me. He says, Mark, what's going on? And I said, Dad, I'm getting a dog from the White House. And so my dad's, a respected clergyman in Columbia, Missouri at the time, and he's a World War II veteran. I mean, he's a man of the world. He understands how things really work, and things like this just don't happen. And he goes, Mark, I think somebody's playing a bad joke on you. I said, no, Dad, really, it's this that they called. So he was unconvinced. I sent my mom down to talk to him, and she got convinced by my dad that, this is some terrible joke, and how am I going to break Mark's bubble here?
Oh, no.
So we go home from church after the second service, and we see the press corps camped out on our front lawn.
Wow.
So it was a slow news day in August of 1963. This was shortly after Jackie had Patrick. He had died just a couple of days after he was born. So Jackie and the Kennedy family were in the midst of their own sad week, and yet they basically exhibit grace to me. And being a well-mannered child, I wrote Jackie a thank you letter and John a thank you letter. And Jackie writes me back in September of '63 and says a very personal 3-page handwritten letter, a lot of anecdotes about what life is like at the White House behind the scenes. And she ends the letter by saying, "Please stay in touch because we'll really be interested in knowing how you all turn out," meaning me and the dog.
Uh-huh.
And Carolyn had named all 4 pups, and as you mentioned before, Strelka was this hero of the Soviet Empire because of her space travel. First dog to come back from space alive, and a Sputnik. And so it was a very unique bloodline that Streaker represented.
Wow.
Streaker was the name of the pup that I got.
So did Carolyn name Streaker?
She did. She named Streaker, and she named him Streaker because he had a streak of white across his nose.
Okay.
So I did what Jackie basically asked me to do. I stayed in touch. And even though we had actually planned a photo op in January of 1964 with the Kennedys because they were making a campaign stop in Colombia, but obviously that never happened because Jack was assassinated just a couple of months after that in the late November of '63. But every couple of years, I would sit down, I'd write a letter to Jackie and to the kids, and send them a picture of myself and Streaker, and Jackie would always write me back.
Oh, my God.
And she would thank me for my letter. She would thank me for my letters.
Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
That is such a great story.
That is a wonderful story.
So let's ask you a few questions about that. First of all, the cover of the book is on the streaming thing that we're doing right now. So if you're looking at it, I think that's Streaker because it looks like I see a white streak on his nose.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And so when President Kennedy was assassinated, did you feel it? We all felt it. But did you feel it maybe a little more than the average person because you had a relationship with them?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was. I don't know if I was devastated at that time, but it was just, again, another sad time. And it was an innocent time in our country's history, I think, much more so than what we see today.
Right.
Kennedy was the president of all the people, not just people that liked him. And it was this national, I think all of us that were alive at that time and remember that day, we know exactly where we were, what we were doing when we heard that news.
Yeah.
Were you influenced by Jacqueline Kennedy and the president about his graciousness to you to give you a life back in the form of a dog that prompted you to go into the medical profession to help others?
I did, and there were a couple of different things. Certainly Jackie's encouragement with that was very important. I felt like, because I had stayed in touch with her through my really for the next 3 decades, until the early mid-'80s, we stayed in touch. And so I would let her know I was in college, I was applying to medical school, this is what I was interested in. And she encouraged me all the way along the way. And it was one of those situations where I felt like I can't let Jackie down. And that just kind of, that consistent encouragement on her part, the affirmation that I got from her incredible graciousness that she exhibited, many times in the midst of her own tragedies, really allowed me to see the importance of exhibiting the grace that I had experienced to other people. And medicine is a great way to do that.
That is a great, great story. And Robin, your insightful question is so amazing. So the idea that you had a relationship with the Kennedys, was it only with Jacqueline after a while, or did you stay friendly with the presidents of the 2 children, for example, Carolyn and Jack Jr.?
I personally did not, but Jackie made it very clear in her letters that she was sharing my pictures and my letters with Carolyn and John, and how interested they were in all of what was going on in my life too. But I never had direct communication with the children, just with Jackie.
Did your spiritualness grow because of this?
It really did, and it was because there were a number of other dynamics, obviously, in my life. At the time, my father developed brain cancer and died whenever I was 18 years old.
Oh, my gosh.
He was sick for a period of about 9 months before his death. And that was one of those areas that also kind of pushed me towards medicine, because I felt very helpless being a high school graduate, losing my father and not being able to do anything about it.
Yeah.
So I gravitated towards medicine because I'd been around the medical community a lot during his illness and had gotten to know a number of physicians and healthcare providers during that time.
So your father was a reverend. Was a lot of times the reverend's child doesn't necessarily become religious or spiritual, but it sounds like in your case you did.
I think it's really important for all of us to question our faith. I think that a faith unquestioned is fairly superficial many times. And I went through that period of time where I would really, after my father's death, where I was like, God, why did you do this? Here was this man who had a very, very dynamic ministry. Why? Yeah. But we understand the more we look at God's progressive revelation of his character through our holy scriptures, we see snippets of God showing himself to us all through that. And when all of us are called, and when we accept that call, that initial call is basically to have a relationship with him. And once we accept that call, then we are kind of called on to further service, because, Jesus Christ didn't die on the cross just so we could have a good time, because it's a messy world out there. Mm-hmm. And that had a profound impact, too, in terms of my own giftedness, as I'm an emergency medicine physician. And there's a couple of aspects of emergency medicine that are so important. And one of those is rapid judgment. You've got to be able to tell very quickly if somebody's sick or not sick, and then know what to do.
Yeah.
And that fit me. That fit my giftedness very, very well. And so I've been able to, again, through Jackie, exhibit that same and give that same grace to other people that are in the midst of their own tragedies around the world, because I've done a lot of medical relief work in disaster zones, especially in the Asian theater. And it has allowed me, it's amazing to me looking back to see how that encouragement that Jackie gave me and that relationship that I had with Jackie has impacted not just my life, but through me, lives around the world.
Are you able to be objective within your own family and give that same kind of encouragement to your children and grandchildren so they realize what their gifts are and what they're pursuing?
This is one of the reasons why I wrote this book. It's because my children, we have 5 children. Maura and I have been married for over 42 years. We have 7 grandchildren. We are so blessed. And they had grown up with kind of hearing in the background the dog story. But about 2 years ago, Audi Automobiles came to me and asked to do a documentary on Strelka, the legacy of Strelka. And this was done through a European film company. And it was at that point in time that I realized that, there was an opportunity here for people to understand and know the deeper meaning of what this story really meant to me, and how God's grace can change our lives and then through us change other people's lives. So that was a big part of helping my children and grandchildren understand, again, the deeper meaning of really what this story represented to me.
It's a warm story, but you are such a profound writer and such a profound speaker that there are many levels to this book that I wasn't even aware of until hearing you talk now. One of the things I think about is how a dog brings joy to our lives just by being themselves, just by being there, and that's part of your story. But when you and I'm not a religious expert in any way, but when I think about we're in the Christmas season, so we're going to think about the birth of Jesus, and I always wonder, like, when he was like a toddler, when he was learning to crawl and learning to walk and learning to speak, was he making his mom and Joseph, are they giggling at him? Like, my son has a newborn and he like loves it. It's like, just, and I think, I wonder if that happened to Jesus's parents, did his earthly parents, and if you could have known the future that this guy is going to grow up and then sacrifice his life for all of us, oh my gosh, you would have, I don't know what you would have done. It's very profound what you have been able to put together in one very relatable story.
Well, thank you, Larry, for those kind words. And I would just encourage you and your listeners, if they have really if this has piqued their interest, go to the book website, which is JackieBoyDog.com. And in the publication date for this book is March 1st, so they'll be able to buy this at Barnes & Noble and the other big bookstores. Right now, they can order it online as a pre-order through Amazon, but it's also available as an e-book, and it will be available probably by the end of next week through my website, and I can actually we have a limited release opportunity with some copies that I have that I'll be able to sell before that publication date. So we'll have the store set up in the website probably by the end of next week.
That is awesome. Yeah, and I did find that on Amazon. Also, if somebody wants to go get the book there, do you think that relationship affected your political viewpoints at all?
Well, I have a profound respect for life in general. And so I tend to gravitate towards a political viewpoint that has that same respect for life, both in terms of being pro-choice. I am not pro-choice. I am very much pro-life.
Absolutely.
And I think that once you get on that pro-choice slippery slope, all of a sudden you start deviating away from really what God is the author of life. And we have to have our viewpoints, I think, in sync with kind of that same perspective that we have through revealed to us, again, through that progressive revelation of God's character through the Holy Scripture.
And there's a divine moment happening right now.
I love this.
The fact we're talking to you and there's a dog in the background, I think that just was... So
that's one of my grand dogs. We have 4 grand dogs. You should have seen us on Thanksgiving because we had all 19 of our kids and grandkids here, and 4 grand dogs here for Thanksgiving dinner too. So it was a real hoot. We had a great time. But we're still dog sitting for Bert right now. Bert is our grand dog from Madison. So.
You are a blessed man, and you have just shared some of that blessing with us. Well, I can't think of a better way to end the week than with your interview. Doctor, thank you so much for doing this. Could I ask you to repeat the website one more time, please?
Yes. It's JackieBoyDog.com.
Easy enough. JackieBoyDog.com. Dr. Mark D. Bruce, have a beautiful Christmas season. Thank you so much for being on the air with us. And if you ever want to warm up, come to Florida. We're here.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Robin. Good to talk to you.
Beautiful interview. We'll be right back.